This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I am good and bad.
Okay. I want to hear more about that, but I love your hair. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful,
It's
beautiful.
new.
Huh?
It's a new. The locks aren't new, but the style is a new to me. So
It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So
thank you.
beautiful.
I'll
So
let the stylist know.
excellent. Please tell us your name.
My name is KaDarra Lowe.
A beautiful name as well. May I ask you to please share something about yourself you feel comfortable sharing?
Okay, my name is KaDarra Lowe. I am from and of the Bronx, New York. I have lived in the Bronx my entire life, and I still reside here on purpose, with intention. And I have a lot of pride in my community. Uh, it's a I think an interesting place to be right now. I think I'm in an interesting place, and so to represent the Bronx as I move forward and upward, I think is a blessing and quite a privilege.
Excellent. So I saw in the news there was a tragedy in the Bronx just very recently. Were you safe from that? And, was that near you, or did you know anything about what had happened?
It actually was very close to me, the location. It was maybe a 10-minute drive, maybe less, from where I live. Um, to this date, I'm not aware that I know anyone who lives in that building or know anyone's family members or related to that building. I hope that I don't find out that I do, because it's very sad what happened. I've heard two different stories, and I do work for the fire department. So I'm sorry, excuse me. And so I guess, I can access the report when they finish the investigation, but it is, I believe the first report I heard was that one of the electronic bikes or scooters, the battery overcharged. And once those machines, those sets on fire, it's very difficult to put the fire out. It's even difficult for the firefighters to put those fires out. Then I read in another report. So I heard one thing from the fire department, and then I saw a report that it was a heater that overheated, which, this has happened in New York City. We don't always get some buildings that are, and I'm not saying that this building wasn't managed properly, but in many cases, many buildings aren't managed properly, and we're not getting heat. So many of us, including myself, use heaters to heat our home in the wintertime. And sometimes those heaters, unfortunately, catch fire.
Right.
So something caught fire. And in New York City, some of the buildings aren't fireproof. I, thank God, I guess that's the bonus to where I live. I live in a fireproof building. So if a fire starts in my home, it will not spread to the neighbor. But in that specific location, they do not have the same, the building is not made of the same material, of the same foundation, I should say. And unfortunately, the fire spread and got out of control. And that's as far as I really know, and what I gather from, just living in the Bronx, and what I've read, and what I've heard from people in the department. So.
Well, we send our prayers and well wishes to those families that were upset by that. And we also send prayers to those who were not, because we're living in very strange times. So
very strange times, very strange times. I'm sure I know someone who knows someone who lives in that building. And that's why I'm like, it's only been a couple of weeks. So I just, my heart goes out to those who know them, because it's painful. We're living in painful times, not strange, painful times.
Yeah. In a
So
lot of ways, yes, absolutely. So let me ask you this. I want to know more about why you say you made such emphasis about living in the Bronx. But my first question is, how did you decide to become a firefighter? Go ahead, KaDarra. That is absolutely a big up. Thank you. That's wonderful.
well,
Thank you for your service.
I'm going to take the big up because I do work for the fire department and I do serve the city of New York. I, however, am not a firefighter. I am a I am a procurement contracting officer. I purchase for the fire department. I purchase services for the fire department. And I make sure that the organization is in compliance with the city's 30% mandate to do business with marginalized communities, communities of color, and women.
What's a
Um,
community of color?
hmm.
That's a
For
trick
me,
question. That's a trick question.
I know it's a trick question. That's why I said, oh, interesting question. Um,
Because that assumes white is not a color. Because all of us are of color.
Good point. Okay. So I'm using a word that is often used in politics, right?
Absolutely.
So the program is focused on minorities. The real phrase is MWBE. So minority and women owned business enterprises, right? So they can define minority however they want. The buckets that I'm aware of is African American, Latino, or Hispanic, um, Asian, Asian Indian. Um, those are the buckets that I'm aware of in terms of communities of color, right? Or minorities. Those are the minorities we're talking about. And then women, right? And that can be women of any, as you say, color, right? Um, for me, my work is very much about Black people. And I'm going to say that publicly.
Absolutely.
Because Black communities have been the most impacted economically, right? And in other politically charged spaces, policy, we have been impacted, Black people. So for me, while I believe in diversity and equality and humanity, I have to pay particular attention to Black people.
It makes sense. And I still think it's a big up. I mean, you still provide a service that's essential to the fire department and the people that you work with. So I don't think it's not anything to be minimized. I think we should promote that you are doing a very good service, and we are very, very, very happy that you are there. So now I want to go back to how you started. You made a lot of emphasis about living in the Bronx. Most of my family, when they left the South, Jim Crow times and such, went to New York. So I have family everywhere. I used to have family in the Bronx. Thank God I don't think I have any in the Bronx anymore because I've lost track of them if I have. But most of my family's in Brooklyn and Queens now, that's still living. So what's special about the Bronx? I mean, we've heard the stories, but why the Bronx? What's special about the Bronx?
You know, we get so much shit. I know we're one of the poorest cities in the country, right? Um, the least educated, as they say. Um, I feel like we're associated with um, the worst reputations when we speak about urban communities. I feel like we lack in resources. Um, and I don't believe that people expect much from us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I talk about the Bronx because we are at a disadvantage. It's not true, right? What they're saying, I mean, they're not telling the whole truth, right? The picture, right, isn't all there. But I live here, so I know that it's not all untrue. And so we have to work extra hard to survive, even those of us who have done the right thing, right? And so it's important for me to tell our story because I recognize that I am in a privileged space to tell the story, right? Just by way of this very conversation. And so I'm not going to I'm going to take advantage of every opportunity to tell our story and to promote where I come from and the people that are here. And by the way, not just Black people that are here. They want to say Black and brown. I guess, you know, I don't guess. Some people consider themselves brown, but I don't subscribe to Black and brown. If you are brown, then you're probably Black, right? So I grew up where everybody was cool, because that's I went to schools where everybody was cool. Even the people that I know, the communities that I know who really don't want to be Black and aren't considered brown, we were all cool. And so I feel a sense of responsibility to speak up for people who came up with me, because those are my people. But particularly Black people. That's just what it is.
So let me ask you a question about that. So if you study history and you know the world as a whole, you know that almost every study, every scientific research suggests that humanity as we know it today started in Africa. And if you believe Africa is a Black continent, then all people, regardless of how they look, are Black to some degree. But then you have to then dissect what that means to be Black or whatever, because we've described so many labels to describe people. That's why I asked you about communities of color. Like, I think that when we take on another label, BIPOC, you know, whatever these things are that people come up with and they slap it on people, it is meant to separate and degrade one of them. Now, which one is it? Is the Black one? Is the white one? Is the brown? Is it the yellow? Is it the red? Whatever it is, it's meant to do that. That's why there's a label, right? So things like Native Americans versus Indians, it's a label meant to do something to people. And so in a lot of ways, you know, how we see color and race in the world is so flawed, because when you pull back this layer of whatever you see, so whether you're Black, white, blue, green, orange, whatever color you are, when you die, you're none of those colors. You are Black, for lack of a better term. The blood in your body causes as it leaps out of your body and goes away, your pigmentation leaves you. So to me, to accept a label like Black or white or Hispanic or whatever, if you're talking about my region and where I come from, okay, I accept that. African American isn't terrible. I think I know what that means. You know, you got an African descent, you live in America. I think that's what they intended for that to mean. But it's another one of those labels that puts people in categories. Same for Native Americans, you know. So for the longest time, they were Indians until we grew up and became politically correct, and now they're Native Americans. Whatever it is, these labels, I don't care how you define them, whether it's your gender, your age, your race, your sexual orientation, your religion, it's meant for a reason. And I understand classification. You need to classify people for a reason. But after a while, we keep going until we get to the point where the person is so small by these labels that they almost don't even exist anymore. And so what's interesting about what you're saying about the Bronx is that as a community, you see yourselves as this, and you are working toward that. But I will say, here's my challenge to you. While I know what the 5 boroughs are, been in all the 5 boroughs and much more than that, you know, to me, what happened to the Bronx was when Clinton and his organization went there, and it made it less dingy, if you will, you know, kind of like the Bronx took on this new thing. But for people who heard that And I think that's a part of the reason why we always get up with these false stories or false narratives about things, is that the Bronx wasn't this wonderful place prior to him coming there. So the rest of the world, that's what we heard. It became great when he came there. It was great. It was a trendy place to be, all of these things. But in reality, what it is, it just gives all of our power to someone else as opposed to ourselves to see what our communities are and how we see ourselves versus how the rest of the world sees us.
Well,
and I love that Carolina sweatshirt. So I just want to say to get that in there. I'm in North Carolina.
Tar Heel all day, Tar Heel born, Tar Heel bred. I want to say this: it doesn't matter how I define myself or other people, the labels. How I self-identify, and I didn't create the labels. They were here when I got here, literally.
And some have been added since you've been here.
Right. So I'm not going to take responsibility for the division because I didn't create it. But I live in the world where it was created for me. Right. And I'm on the other side of the equation. And it's not adding up.
I love it.
And so what I feel charged to do is to get myself and my people on the other side of the equation.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
And whoever wants to help is welcome to help. Because again, I didn't create the labels. It's interesting because what you say about, if I believe, you mentioned people coming from Africa and being of some manipulation or descent, right, of African people or African humanity, right? I recently, as a matter of fact, 2 days ago, got back from Cartagena, Colombia. And I visited a community called Palenque in Africa, which is the African spelling of the name. And they talked about people coming from Africa, like everybody is just one. And while they believe that, substantially, it is they have written it into their community. They promote it, right? It was something that they made sure that I knew. Mm-hmm. They are very aware of who they are, mm-hmm. of their Blackness, their Africanness, very extremely aware. And they protect that community and they run that community. They are in control of that community in a way that I have never seen. And I have studied abroad in Africa, right? And I've never even seen this in Africa. They function very much like a reservation, which I thought was very interesting. Very much like the Jewish community, which I thought was very interesting. They are not allowing other people to run their community. You can't even be a part of the community until you're of that community for 10 years and you literally married into it. And so I do subscribe to that idea, right? That people are coming from this motherland. But we're still living in a world that is divisive. But while I was in Cartagena, it was interesting that I literally spent a day with an African man, 2 white boys, and an Asian young man. And I had one of the best times of my life. And I thought, and I really had great conversation with all of them, but even the two young white men, young, meaning age-wise, we're not even, they're not my peers, right? And I said, they were so cool. They didn't push back any topic that came up. They didn't shy away from it. They didn't over lean into it. They didn't cross any of my boundaries, whatever boundaries I have, right? I'm pretty open to have any conversation. And we weren't really talking about race, but I think it's weird almost, or unusual, when if race just never comes up in a group, in a setting that was as diverse as the five, what was it, the five of us. um and I said, they're so interesting. I hope to see them grow and go on and do great things. I think they have a good idea. They have a solid head on their shoulders. They're high school friends. They graduated from college or finishing school. They're figuring it all out. They're working, but they're also pursuing their dreams, entrepreneurial dreams at the same time. I found it very motivating, and I really enjoyed their company. And I said to myself, I really like people, and I like different people. I like to meet different people. And it pains me that white people and other people that may not be considered white people can make it their business to make it so hard for Black people. Because if we can move away, if we could just be people, we could really enjoy each other.
Yeah, good point.
And
very good point.
And that's what we were doing. We obviously we were different. I mean, clearly I'm a woman, they were men. I was African American Black, right? I'm Black American. The man, the guy who was more my peer in age, was African, from Africa, of Uganda, right? Grew up in Canada, raised in Canada, right? These men grew up in Connecticut in high school, and this very Asian dude, he was Chinese. Chinese. And I think, they work on music together, and I'm sure they have other bonds that I haven't known them their whole lives, but we were obviously very different. And I enjoyed my time with them to the extent it's like, I want to hang out with them again. And it's like, why can't we just enjoy each other like this? Obviously, we're of different culture, but I think we respected that. It was like, oh, okay, really just kind of learning from one another and connecting on those levels that humans naturally connect on. That's what we were doing.
Very nice. So let me ask you this. So what you describe is just being human and being able to see commonalities in people. But do you think that all people, like if you were to meet that same group of ethnicities in the Bronx or in Manhattan or Washington, D.C. or in the South, like I am, that you would have that same experience?
It's possible, and I have had that same experience. I told you, when I was growing up in the Bronx, not necessarily, I don't think it's something that I thought about when I was in elementary school, but in New York City high schools at the time, you could get any student coming from any borough or any community. It wasn't necessarily the school up the block. So I went to DeWitt Clinton High School, which is another place like Carolina, very proud alumni, okay? The greats, including Baldwin, came out of DeWitt Clinton High School. Mm-hmm. I'll name another great, Stan Lee, Ralph Lauren, came out of DeWitt Clinton High School. Mm-hmm. And I'm right behind them, okay? But at Clinton, my friends were my friends.
And they weren't by race or age or anything.
No, we were all, especially I was a part of a cohort Macy's program. so we're very bright, brilliant students. And we had really one commonality that mattered, and that was to get A's.
Good.
Just get A's so we can get into great colleges. That was our goal. That was our thread. Everything else was we were just being teenagers. And I didn't think of course I realized Randy's Asian, or, Supana's Cambodian, or what. Yes, I can see them, but that wasn't, it wasn't a thing. And really, I didn't consider that we were really different until I went to Carolina, and the Asians were over here, and the Indians were over here, and the Black people were over here, and white people were everywhere, because they're just everywhere. And I didn't realize that I didn't have to think about that we were that different. So I can have these experiences in the Bronx. I've had these experiences in Manhattan, or it can happen anywhere. I think when you get to the workplace, it looks a lot different. And I think people behave very differently in corporate spaces.
I think I agree with you.
So
I think that the lack of diversity in the workplace, I think, your experiences are kind of like, a happy concept of how life is. But in reality, when you pull back that curtain, the struggle is still there. You can find people, like I have a massive community of people, and they look like the United Nations, people from all over the world, everywhere, every ethnicity. But in reality, I still face racism. I still experience discrimination, bias, all of these things almost every single day. The degree of it depends on how much I'm allowing to come into my life. I don't accept all of it anymore. When I was younger, yeah, but I've gotten older, and I'm like, okay, I'm not for all this foolishness. You want a bunch of foolishness, you need to go find somebody else, because I'm not for that. But there are opportunities to create beautiful communities of diverse people across all the spectrums, age, gender, your religion, your sexual orientation, whatever it is. There's opportunities for all that, and that happens every day. The problem is it's more microscopic than it should be. It should be broader. It should be what you experienced when you were in Cartagena, and all the other places you've been should be like that all the time, as opposed to little pockets of it here and there.
I just live a very nuanced life. And I started out talking about the Bronx because more and more and more, I'm starting to believe there's something weird going on.
In the Bronx, or in general?
In general, in terms of, but having to do with where I come from. That is very tied into, I have to say, race, because that ties into economics and politics, right? And so, and opportunity. So I start out saying I'm from the Bronx because without you knowing what color I am, it already gives you context.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
And so I am on a mission. I am not, I have to plug up. 1 second. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. I have to, I am on a mission to prove something, to prove some people wrong. Now, who the people are, I don't really know who the people are, right? But I think just by way of me being from the Bronx, I've been judged.
Why?
I'm no more or less gifted than my peers, right? And my peers do very, very well.
I think in a lot of ways, we're all are judged. I think the question just is to what degree does the judgment impact us and how we see ourselves? So let me ask you this. If someone said to you, KaDarra, you're a Black woman in the Bronx, and Bronx is not that great a place. The question is how much value or weight you put on that statement based on who gave it to you. So if your mother said that, if your father said that, if your sister or brother, whomever said that, I could see weighting it because, you know, these are people who matter to you and are important in your life. But if I, who you don't know or barely know, were to say, wow, I can't believe you live in the Bronx, why would that matter to you?
Excuse me. Well, let's define how it matters to me. So trying to say something about me or degrade me, for example, for being from the Bronx, it's like telling me, look up at the sky and it's pink. When I look up at the sky, I know that it's not pink. No matter what you say or who is saying it,
say less. Say less. Woo! That's
so
it right
if
there.
you tell me something about the Bronx or about myself that I know is just not true, then I cannot absorb it. I don't absorb it. That's not my point. What I'm saying is there is a construct in place that I didn't create. I'm just here. My mother I didn't ask to give birth to myself. I'm just here living this life. It was already here when I got here. It's not about that I believe it, that I'm absorbing it. It's that it's right here in my face. And so I am challenged every day to overcome whatever the obstacle is that has been moved in my face. And I can move the obstacle this way, and I can I can keep doing that. But somebody keeps putting something in. Now, the who changes every day, right? Where I go, it looks different. It sounds different every day. Sometimes you don't even see it. Sometimes you do. What my goal is to keep going, keep going, keep going. And to get the story out so that other people like me and unlike me, because again, I am privileged, even in my disadvantaged, right, position, right? I still recognize I'm privileged. I was gifted to be brilliant, okay? I didn't have any problems in school. I was an A student my whole life. And every teacher liked me my whole life, unlike Black boys who are not liked in school. So I was just privileged by way of being female. I was privileged because I was identified as smart. Somebody identified me as smart. And because you are smart and well behaved, right? I wasn't aware that I struggled with any issues, right? Development issues, not at the time. So I was then tracked to a certain way in the school system to be amongst the best teachers, amongst the brightest students. And I was tracked that way all the way through high school. That allowed me to get into the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with only a 17% admission level for out-of-state students. And I was a part of that 17%. That alone is a privilege. Then I came out, graduated, came back home. I had to go back to the projects, okay? Because that's where I'm from. There was nowhere else to go. So I got to go back home from my lavish life in Carolina because it was heaven on earth. I mean, we had our challenges every university does, but I appreciate every challenge the university ever gave to me, every experience. Because there were experiences, but that's a whole nother, it's a whole nother conversation. But when I got back, I had to go back to the reality of my life, but I was, to some extent, blinded because I came from a university that polished me and my peers. And we already come out of that university with a mentality that we are unstoppable and unconquerable and really invictus in our endeavors. And so there was nothing that I thought I cannot do coming home. Until I found out that's absolutely not true.
Amazing. True.
So it's not true. And so now, as I try to figure it out, because I now have tools that my mother didn't have, I have access that my mother didn't have, I have dreams that my mother probably doesn't know she could have dreamed, right? So I cannot lean on my mother for any instruction or direction to navigate. Why am I still being kept out of spaces? Because I'm invictus. I have an S on my chest. Why am I having so much struggle? I'm still trying to figure that out.
I can give you a hint.
Give me a hint.
Fear of a Black woman. I believe that's a phrase that I've heard several times. And so when you're afraid of something, what do? You run from it and you do everything you can to make sure it doesn't affect you at all. And that's a part of what's happening across our entire planet. What you're experiencing has nothing to do with you. It's a fear of the concept of you, not you personally, but the concept of you. But I will say this, and we are running out of time on our chat, but I will say this. Your view of life, your statements are pretty powerful. I think you're a good way down the road to redacting what's happening to you, to crossing out those people who say, no, you can't. You're saying, yes, I can, because I have everything I need to, and I'm not going to accept your confinement of my abilities.
Mm-hmm. If you know me, whether you meet me in the workplace or you knew me 20 years ago, or you met me 5 years ago, or you meet me tomorrow, if you know me, you know I don't like no. I don't take no for an answer ever. And I ain't gonna start today because I'm just not built like that. I'm not built to accept no. Now I get no's. I get a whole lot of no's. But
find a way around them.
Yeah, I don't do no. I'll find another way.
I love it.
And my desire, and this is not good, it's not my best trait. But my desire to show everybody that I can and make people look crazy or I want to just, my desire to show you is so great. And that is probably the single thing that keeps me from giving up.
I love it. I absolutely love it. KaDarra, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I hope you'll come back and share some more of your insights with me. Very, very wonderful to see a young person with these ideas and these philosophies. It's very, very, very good to see. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And I will send you a link as soon as the video converts. Please let me know if I can upload it.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.